Most people don't know what they believe politically. They know who they hate. They know which party annoys them less. They know which slogans make them feel smart. They know which side their friends would punish them for criticizing. But ask them what trade-offs they're actually willing to accept. Silence, tumbleweeds, a nervous sip of oat milk. Because modern politics doesn't really train people to think. It trains people to pick teams, left or right, progressive or conservative, Labour or Liberal, Greens or One Nation, good person or bad person, enlightened genius or dangerous cook. Very helpful, really advanced stuff. And once you pick the team starts doing your thinking for you. You inherit the opinions, you inherit the enemies, you inherit the talking points, you inherit the outrage starter pack, which usually comes with a free tote bag and the inability to enjoy Christmas lunch. So in this video, I want to give you a simple way to work out what you actually believe politically, not what your parents believe, not what your friends reward you for saying, not what your algorithm keeps spoon feeding you like ideological baby food, what you actually believe. And the way to do that is not by asking, am I left-wing or right-wing? That question is too small. The better question is, what principles do I actually believe in? And what trade-offs am I willing to live with? Because that's where your real politics are. Not in the slogan, not in the party, not in the politician pretending to care about working families while owning 7 investment properties and saying lived experience like it came out of a microwave. Your politics live in your trade-offs. So here are 5 tests you can use to work out where you really sit. Test 1, the freedom test. Ask yourself this: what should people be free to do, even when I personally dislike it? That's the real test. Because freedom is easy when people use it in ways you approve of. Everyone believes in freedom for people who agree with them. That's not impressive. That's just having a fan club. The real test is whether you still support freedom when someone is annoying, offensive, weird, wrong, unpopular, or makes you want to walk into the ocean. Do you believe people should be allowed to say things you hate? Do you believe people should be allowed to make lifestyle choices you think are stupid? Do you believe parents should have room to raise their kids according to their values? Do you believe religious people should be free to practice their faith? Do you believe non-religious people should be free from religion being forced on them? Do you believe people should be able to question the government, the media, big corporations, activists, scientists, academics, and whatever new moral priesthood has just arrived wearing a lanyard? Because this is where a lot of people discover they're not as liberal as they thought. They like freedom in theory, but the second someone uses it badly, they want a manager. Sometimes that manager is the state, sometimes it's HR, sometimes it's the media, sometimes it's an angry mob online full of people who look like they collect emotional support water bottles. But the instinct is the same. Stop that person, punish them, make them apologize, make them disappear. Now, obviously, freedom doesn't mean freedom from every consequence. If you say something stupid, people are allowed to think you're an idiot. That's part of the deal. But there's a big difference between criticism and destruction, a big difference between disagreement and punishment, a big difference between saying, I think you're wrong, and saying you should lose your job, your reputation, your friends, and your ability to pay rent because you said one sentence I didn't like. That's insane. A healthy society needs disagreement, it needs friction, it needs people who can say, hang on, are we sure this is true? Because if everyone is too scared to speak honestly, society doesn't become kinder, it becomes fake. Everyone smiles, everyone nods, everyone says the approved sentence. Then they go home and say what they really think in group chats. Great system, very healthy, no chance that explodes later. So that's the first test. What freedom do you defend when it annoys you? That tells you a lot. Test 2, the government test. Ask yourself, what problems do I actually trust government to solve? And what problems do I think government usually makes worse? This is where politics gets childish. Some people act like government is the solution to everything. Others act like government is always evil and the country should be run by a bloke named Damo with a ute, a spreadsheet, and strong opinions about council permits. Both are ridiculous. Government has a role. Of course it does. Roads, hospitals, defence, police, courts, infrastructure, basic safety nets, disaster response, border protection, the stuff that stops society from turning into a Mad Max sequel with worse fashion. But government also has limits, and pretending it doesn't is how you end up with bloated departments, useless programs, wasted money, and politicians creating problems, then asking for more power to fix the problems they created. That's like giving your dog a chainsaw because it already destroyed the couch. So you need to ask, where should government be strong? Where should government stay out? Where should the market operate? Where do communities, families, charities, businesses, and individuals do a better job? Because the size of government is not the only question. Competence matters. A small, useless government is still useless. A large, competent government is at least possible in theory, although in practice it often turns into a meeting about a meeting with a steering committee and an invoice. So don't ask, do I like government? Ask, where does government help? Where does it interfere? Where does it protect people? Where does it infantilize them? Where does it solve real problems? And where does it just slap a logo on a disaster and call it a strategy? And don't cheat. Don't say government is bad until it's your favorite program. And don't say government should help without asking how much it costs, who pays, and whether it actually works. Which brings us to the big one. Test 3, the trade-off test. Ask yourself, what cost am I willing to accept for the outcome I want? This is the most important one, because every policy has a cost, every promise has a consequence, every shiny idea comes with a bill. And usually that bill gets handed to someone who wasn't invited to the press conference. This is where most political debate turns into absolute nonsense. People argue for outcomes without admitting the trade-offs. They say they want affordable housing. Great, who doesn't? But are you willing to increase supply? Are you willing to reform planning laws? Are you willing to upset existing homeowners whose paper wealth depends on scarcity? Are you willing to reduce investor incentives? Are you willing to slow population growth? Are you willing to accept more density in areas where people currently complain if a duplex looks at them funny? Because make housing affordable is easy to say. Actually doing it means someone loses. That's politics. Same with wages. You want higher wages? Good. Perfectly reasonable. But what happens to small business? What happens to prices? What happens to hiring? What happens to automation? What happens to young workers trying to get their first job? Maybe higher wages are still worth it, but you have to answer the cost. Same with immigration. You want high immigration? Fine. What happens to housing? Roads, hospitals, schools, wages, culture, social cohesion. You want lower immigration? Okay. What happens to universities, tourism, skills shortages, aged care, construction, economic growth? You don't get to skip the second half because it's inconvenient. Same with net zero. You want lower emissions? Fine. What happens to energy prices? Reliability, manufacturing, regional jobs, working families, mining communities. Again, maybe the trade-off is worth it, but don't pretend there isn't one. A political belief without a trade-off is just a wish wearing a suit. That's the line. That's the whole game. The trade-off test cuts through the marketing because politics is full of people who want the benefit and pretend the cost is fake, evil, exaggerated, or paid by the rich, which usually means anyone earning slightly more than them. And this is where you start to find your real politics, not by asking what sounds nice. Everything sounds nice. Affordable homes sound nice, higher wages sound nice, lower taxes sound nice, better hospitals sound nice, safer streets sound nice, cleaner energy sounds nice. Free beer and a labradoodle for every household also sounds nice. But adults ask, what does it cost? Who pays? Who benefits? Who loses? What behavior does it reward? What behavior does it punish? What happens next? That's politics for grown-ups. Annoying, yes. Less fun at parties, definitely, but much closer to reality. Test 4, the culture test. Ask yourself, what should society preserve and what should society change? This one gets spicy because culture is where people pretend they're rational, then immediately start acting like someone insulted their grandmother. But it matters. Culture is not just food, music, flags, sport, and whatever Australians are doing to coffee this week. Culture is the invisible operating system of a country. What we reward, what we shame, what we protect, what we tolerate, what we pass on to kids, what we treat as sacred, what we laugh at, what we refuse to laugh at. And your politics are shaped by what you think should be preserved and what you think should be challenged. Do you think family matters? Do you think national identity matters? Do you think free speech matters? Do you think religion has a public role? Do you think tradition contains wisdom? Do you think equality before the law matters more than group-based outcomes? Do you think Western civilization is mostly something to preserve, mostly something to apologize for, or something in between? And on the other side, what needs changing? Where are old systems genuinely unfair? Where has tradition become an excuse for laziness or cruelty? Where are people being left behind? Where are institutions protecting themselves instead of serving the public? Where are we confusing nostalgia with wisdom? because preserving everything is not wisdom, it's taxidermy, and changing everything is not progress, it's vandalism with a TED Talk. So the culture test is about balance. What deserves protection? What deserves reform? What deserves to be thrown into the sea while everyone claps? This question tells you whether you are more conservative, progressive, liberal, nationalist, traditionalist, reformist, or some weird hybrid that makes political parties uncomfortable, which frankly might be a good sign because political parties prefer you simple, easy to target, easy to scare, easy to flatter, easy to sell. But people are not simple. Most people are full of contradictions. You might be economically conservative, but culturally relaxed. You might support free speech, but also support a strong safety net. You might believe in borders and multiculturalism. You might support gay marriage and hate identity politics. You might care about climate change, but think some climate activists speak like they've never paid an electricity bill. That's normal. Humans are messy. Ideology hates that. Test 5, the team test. Ask yourself, which side am I willing to criticize when they act badly? This is the loyalty test. And it is brutal because most people think they have principles, but really they have a side. They can spot hypocrisy instantly when the other team does it. Corruption, easy. Lies, obvious. Extremism, disgusting. Censorship, dangerous. Incompetence, unforgivable. But when their own side does the exact same thing, suddenly it's complicated. Suddenly there's context. Suddenly we need nuance. Suddenly everyone turns into a defense lawyer with a podcast. This is how you know politics has become tribal. If you can only see authoritarianism on the right, you're not paying attention. If you can only see authoritarianism on the left, you're also not paying attention. If you only care about corruption when the other side does it, you don't care about corruption, you care about winning. If you only defend free speech for people you agree with, you don't care about free speech. You care about your team having a microphone. If you only care about misinformation when it hurts your side, you don't care about truth. You care about narrative control. And if you can excuse anything from your own side because the other side is worse, congratulations, you're not political, you're branded merchandise. Your real politics show up when your own side disappoints you. That's when you find out whether you have principles or just a scarf. So ask yourself, what would my side have to do for me to call them out? What would make me change my mind? What evidence would make me uncomfortable? Which opinions am I scared to say out loud because my group might punish me? That last one matters. Because the opinions you're afraid to say often reveal the beliefs you haven't fully admitted to yourself yet. Not always. Sometimes you're afraid because the opinion is terrible and your conscience is doing pest control. But often fear is a clue. It shows where your social incentives are controlling your thinking. And that is the whole point of this exercise, to stop outsourcing your brain to a party, to a tribe, to an algorithm, to a media outlet, to some bloke online yelling into a webcam like he's trying to discipline a possum. You need your own principles. Not because you'll always be right. You won't. You'll be wrong plenty. Join the club. We have jackets. But if your beliefs are actually yours, you can update them. You can test them. You can change your mind without feeling like you've betrayed a cult. That's healthy. That's adulthood. That's what politics should be. So once you've run yourself through the 5 tests, you can start building your actual political profile, not your party label, your profile. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. You probably won't fit neatly anywhere. Good. That means you're thinking. You might end up left-wing, you might end up right-wing, you might end up centrist, you might end up libertarian, you might end up conservative, you might end up social democratic, you might end up as some weird political casserole that no party can safely reheat. Fine, at least it's yours. The point is not to become perfectly neutral. That's impossible. Everyone has values, everyone has instincts, everyone has blind spots. The point is to become honest. Honest about what you value, honest about what you fear, honest about who pays for the things you want, honest about what your side gets wrong, honest about what the other side sometimes gets right. Because that's the bit no one wants to admit. The other side is not always wrong. Annoying, isn't it? Ruins a perfectly good tribal hatred. But it's true. The left is often right that markets can leave people behind. The right is often right that government can become bloated, arrogant, and useless. Progressives are often right that old systems can become unfair. Conservatives are often right that tearing down old systems without understanding why they existed can create chaos. Libertarians are often right about state overreach. Social democrats are often right that some things should not be left entirely to market forces. Nationalists are often right that borders, identity, and social cohesion matter. Globalists are often right that cooperation and trade can make countries richer and safer. The adult move is not to swallow one package whole. The adult move is to think. Annoying, slow, unpopular thinking. The kind that doesn't always fit in a tweet, the kind that makes your own side nervous, the kind that forces you to say, I agree with this part, I disagree with that part, I need more information here, I don't know enough to have a strong opinion. That last sentence alone would improve politics by about 40%. Imagine if more people said, I don't know enough to have a strong opinion. Half the internet would shut down overnight. Beautiful. Birds would return. People would go outside. Twitter would become 6 academics and a bot selling sunglasses. When I run myself through these tests, I'd probably say I sit somewhere around centre-right. Classical liberalish. Civil libertarian on speech and personal freedom. Economically pragmatic. Culturally skeptical. Pro-family. Pro-national interest. Pro-controlled immigration. Anti-groupthink. Anti-bullshit. And deeply suspicious of anyone who speaks in perfect talking points. Does that fit neatly into one Australian political party? No. Of course not. Have you seen them? Labor often feels like managerial progressivism with a spreadsheet and a focus group. The Liberals talk about freedom, then look terrified whenever they're asked to defend it. The Greens act like money grows on a heritage-listed eucalyptus tree. One nation picks up real frustrations, then often serves them with a side of blunt force trauma. And the Teals sometimes sound like they were designed in a branding agency for people who want a Tesla, a conscience, and negative gearing. So yes, politically homeless might be the right term, but I don't think that's a problem, because the goal is not to find a team and defend it forever. The goal is to know what you believe and why. So here's the practical exercise. Grab a notebook or your phone or the back of a rates notice if you really want to feel politically motivated, and answer these 5 questions. Number 1, what freedom should people have even when I dislike how they use them? Number 2, what should government do and what should it stay out of? Number 3, what trade-offs am I willing to accept for the outcomes I want? Number 4, what should society preserve and what should it change? Number 5, which side am I willing to criticize when they violate my principles? Don't answer them like you're trying to impress someone. Don't answer them like your friends are watching. Don't answer them like a party strategist is standing over your shoulder with a clipboard and dead eyes. Answer them honestly. That's where your politics begin. And once you do that, you'll probably discover something uncomfortable. You won't fit perfectly anywhere. Good, that means you're thinking. So here's your permission slip. You are allowed to be politically homeless. You are allowed to agree with one side on Monday and call them idiots by Friday. You are allowed to care about compassion and still ask who pays. You are allowed to believe in borders without hating immigrants. You are allowed to support immigration and still ask whether the country has enough houses, hospitals, roads, schools, and jobs to handle it properly. You are allowed to believe in free speech without endorsing every goose with a microphone. You are allowed to preserve good things and reform broken ones. You are allowed to say, I don't know. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to question the party you usually vote for. You are allowed to criticize your own tribe. You are allowed to care more about housing than hashtags. You are allowed to build your own political compass. And you are absolutely allowed to stop outsourcing your brain to politicians, media companies, activists, algorithms, and angry blokes on Twitter. Because politics should not be a costume you wear. It should be a set of principles you can defend when it's inconvenient. That's the test. And honestly, most people never take it. Because if your entire worldview fits perfectly inside one party platform, you probably don't have a worldview. You have a subscription.